All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I'm going to get all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Rakakadash, double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the hopeful elect out here preaching this gospel in sincerity and truth throughout the four corners of the earth. Shalom. This your bro Matazah coming back with another video. And this is just going to be real quick, just something real quick. But I ran across this article right here, and it kind of reminds me of what they're doing over here in Great Babylon, America. They basically stuffing these Palestinians in these camps, these concentration camps. And they're going to try to move all of them in this concentrated area to basically take control of the rest of that land of Gaza, which is what they really want. You know what I'm saying? So let's read this article real quick. And like I said, it's going to be very short. I just want to run through it real quick. But it says Israel plans to move entire Gaza population to a camp, so a concentration camp, and they said that the Palestinians that basically get stuffed in these concentration camps, they won't be allowed to go back outside of that camp to anywhere else in Gaza. Basically, once you are in this camp, once you come in from Gaza into this camp, they say you're not allowed to go back into anywhere into Gaza. The only place you're able to go to other than this camp is a neighboring country, basically be a refugee in a different country's lands. So they're basically just trying to, get these people out of that land and basically claim it for themselves. But like I said, they're doing it in the name of Hamas, which they set up. They set up this whole Hamas thing to be justified on doing what they're doing right now. What you see them doing is cleansing that Gaza strip, of these Palestinians so they can claim that land for themselves. But they're doing an ethnic cleansing very similar to what they're doing over here in Great Babylon, America, with you Israelites, you Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Trump, and all these Edomites are basically building all these different concentration camps, and they're going to try to stuff a lot of you Israelites into these camps to basically do an ethnic cleansing of America. This is why they keep pushing that narrative of Edomite birth rates going down, so-called white people's birth rates going down, and basically they keep putting it out there that they're going to be the minority to basically get these devils roused up. Now the elites, the top Edomites that basically control everything, they don't really give a damn about none of that, the birth rates and all of that, because they want to take control over everything. Their whole mindset is basically the New World Order, and they want to take control of you so-called white people as well as you Israelites. They want to take control over everybody. They want everybody chipped. This is why the scriptures say small and great, rich and poor. It's talking about everybody, even Edomites, Israelites, and all these other different nations as well. They basically want to be the gods of the earth. They want control over everybody, all different races, So let's just read through this article real quick, because like I said, there's some similarities to what they're doing over here in America. But it says Israel's defense minister is preparing to establish a humanitarian city on the ruins of the city of Rafah. And they might turn this into, like they're trying to do over here in America. They got this whole thing with these 15-minute cities and things like that, where everything is basically going to be concentrated in a certain area, and everything else outside of that is basically going to be restricted or locked off. And to even get into these 15-minute cities, you're going to have to be identified digitally. You're basically going to be on a grid, something like that. So this is kind of what they're doing right here. But it says Israel's defense minister is preparing to establish a humanitarian city on the ruins of the city of Rafah. And it says the so-called city will initially house about 600,000 Palestinians and eventually the whole 2.1 million population, according to Israel Katz. Katz said the Palestinians won't be allowed to leave the humanitarian city except for voluntary immigrating to other countries. You see, so they're basically kicking them out of that region. You know, the only place that they can go after being into that prison is a neighboring country, you know, as a refugee. But it says critics of the initiative promptly have branded the city an internment camp, you know, basically a concentration camp, and warn of potentially widespread human rights abuse, which they've been doing that. It's way past human rights abuse by now. You know, they've broken so many war crimes, it's crazy. And this is why the whole world is basically rising up against them, and they're showing their hatred. You know, they're saying they're having that evil eye towards those Edomites over there in Israel, as well as the ones over here in America. But it says the humanitarian city is expected to initially accommodate some 600,000 Palestinians, primarily displaced persons living in the coastal Mawatsi area to the northwest of Rafah, Katz told reporters on Monday. And like I said, I'm not good with these different names. But it said eventually all of the estimated 2.2 million Gazans will be placed into the city, which is to be secured by the Israeli military from a distance and run by unspecified international organizations, the minister stated. You see, so they're going to basically, it says it's going to be secured by Israeli military. So it's basically, it's a prison. You know, it's a giant, you know, similar to what they're trying to do over here in America. Like I said, with the 15-minute cities, they're basically concentrating them in one certain area. It's basically like an open prison. And anywhere else outside of that prison, you know, like the rest of the Gaza region is going to be restricted to them. And the only other place that they're going to be able to go to or have access to is neighboring countries. So they're basically, like I said, forcing them to move out of that region, to move out of that land, you know. So that's an ethnic cleansing right there, you know. But it says, let's go down. It says the Palestinians will undergo screening before being placed into the city to ensure no Hamas operatives slip in. And that's the propaganda right there. You know, the whole reason as opposed of why they're taking these measures and why they're doing what they're doing is because of Hamas terrorists. When we know that that's all set up, that's all a reason to give them the green light of ethnically cleansing those Palestinians out of their region so that they can take it over. You see? It says the scheme is ultimately designed to displace the entire Gaza population and encourage it to voluntarily immigrate from the enclave elsewhere, the minister admitted. Those who end up in the zone would not be allowed to return to other parts of Gaza. You see that? So that every other than that region, other than that prison that they're basically putting these Palestinians in, any other region in Gaza is basically going to be restricted to them. You know, their only choice is to either be in that prison, you know what I'm saying, and get treated inhumanely, or to voluntarily immigrate into a different country. You know what I'm saying? So they basically forcing, they basically got these Palestinians' backs against the wall and forcing them to migrate, you know, so they can take their region over. So this is the devil, and this is why everybody is upset. This is why you always see Free Palestine all over the internet in the comment section, because the whole world is on to what these devils are doing, you know? So let's grab something real quick, and then we'll finish the rest of this article out. Let's grab this one. This is Micah 2:2. And it says, and they covet fields, and they take them by violence, in houses, and take them away. So they oppress a man in his house, even a man and his heritage. So they covet fields. You see that? And they take them by violence. You know, so they desire to have that which is not theirs. You know, they are very covetous. They desire to have something that doesn't belong to them. And this is Esau's track record. He's always been doing this. Even over here in Great Babylon, America, they did this to the Gadites, the so-called Native Americans. Even over there in what they call Europe, which a lot of these Edomites would tell you that that's where they're from. They would tell you that that's where they originated. That's their homeland, over there in Europe. But the same thing happened over there. They took that land from the Japhites, what you would know today to be the Hawaiians, the so-called Samoans, those type of people. Those are the Japhites, and they are the ones that originally inhabited that region over there known as Europe before Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, took it over. So this is their whole track record. This is what they always done, and now you're seeing it play in real time right there over there in their region, over there in the so-called Middle East, what those Israelis are doing to the Palestinians. You're seeing what they've always done, but you're seeing it in real time. This is what they've always done, coveted other people's lands and take it by violence. You see, that's a violent thing that they're doing, locking all of these people up in a prison, basically starving them out, and basically putting their backs against the wall. So the only choice that they have is to migrate into a different land so that they can take their land over. That's bullshit, but that's what these devils do. You know what I'm saying? So let's read the rest of this real quick. It says the defense ministry has already begun planning for the zone, according to Katz. However, the country's authorities have made no public statements on the scheme or said whether it has actually been approved. It also remains unclear when the plan will be put into motion. It says the proposed humanitarian city has been criticized by human rights advocates and activists who have branded it an internal concentration camp and warned of potential abuses. And it says Michael, a leading Israeli human rights lawyer, called the proposed scheme an operational plan for a crime against humanity. You know what I'm saying? Which they don't give a fuck about crimes against humanity, because it comes to find out that these are the same people, these gutter rats that's over there in Israel claiming to be the Israelites, these fake ass Jews. It turns out that they are the same ones that are behind the whole C-19 thing. That concoction that people was basically taking in their arms, which a lot of people came out and said that a lot of people are dying because of that. That's a crime against humanity as well, because a lot of people around the world have taken it and are dying all across the globe. So that's a crime against humanity as well. And come to find out that these same people, these Jewish people, are the same ones that are behind that whole C-19 thing. So they've been committing crimes against humanity. And all this information is coming out, and this is why people, like I said, are having an evil eye towards them, really Edomites in general, really so-called white men in general. People are starting to look at them sideways, man, because it's like this is in their nature. People are starting to realize that they can't do right. This is just in their nature for them to be violent and bloodthirsty, in war addicts. You know what I'm saying? But it says, while the government still calls the deportation voluntary, while the government still calls the deportation voluntary, people in Gaza are under so many coercive measures that no departure from the strip can be seen in legal terms as consensual. It says the humanitarian city plan comes after Israel rejected Hamas' proposed changes to a Gaza ceasefire deal. So they basically set up their own enemy. They wanted that land, and they came up with a plan to set up some terrorists, that was basically going to attack them so that they could justify locking all these Palestinians up and seizing their land. They came up with this plan, and the whole world knows it, man. You know, it says the Palestinian militant group reportedly wanted the agreement to ensure a permanent truce in Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. You know, and that's pretty much it on that. So let's go into one more thing real quick. And this is Obadiah 1 and 2. And it says, behold, I have made thee small among the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. You know, and the whole world is despising these Jewish rats over there in Israel, man. You know, and a lot of people are coming to terms that these people are not the Israelites, the true biblical Israelites. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people are starting to realize that these people are imposters, you know. But like I said, you know what I'm saying, this was just something short that I wanted to go into, you know. So with that, man, I'm going to go ahead and give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, B'Hashem Yahushua, B'Hashem Rakakadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders, their great millstone. Peace and blessings to the hopeful elect. Shalom.